I'm David Henrie, and I've always believed there's more to beauty than what meets the eye. So I set out to search for something more. What role do you think the artist has to play today?
I've been writing about entertainment forever and a day. And now that I write about it for the faith audience, what I hear over and over again from people is we shouldn't be in the media. We shouldn't be near Hollywood. We shouldn't be producing popular entertainment of any sort. Now, of course, this documentary is for EWTN, so it's very much for the Catholic audience, but you're a guy, you spent your life in mainstream entertainment. So, what do you want to say to people who are just like, I don't want my kids to have anything to do with it. I don't want to touch the industry in any way.
To say Catholics or Christians shouldn't be in Hollywood is like saying St. Peter should have never went to Rome. Like, Rome was a very dangerous place. It was very hostile. It was literally killing anyone who was Christian, and more hostile than Hollywood. And he still went, and they all went, and they we now have what we have today because they didn't have that fear-based mentality. We've never retreated from entering the cultural conversation ever. So I think absolutely we need to be trying to empower our artists to go succeed in Hollywood without compromising themselves, and also build parallel tracks where you can, and experiment with new distribution. And there's wonderful opportunities popping up now with many different platforms like EWTN Plus and others.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, as parents, we do have to be vigilant. We have to be protective over our children's eyes and make sure that they're watching things that we feel comfortable over. I think there's been a lot made in the past 10 years that we're not comfortable with our children watching, but I think that's changing. You're definitely seeing that tendency shift now. You're seeing a lot more good content come out. So yeah, I think we've never been a retreatist faith. We've always been on the offense. And I think we need to keep that up.
Well, you're doing a secular series
Yes.
about wizards for
Yes.
Disney Plus, and that is going to like set off rockets in the brains of some people.
Yes. I was actually reading a secular series last night about wizards as well to my children called The Hobbit. And it was really good. We're at the point where Gandalf is saying incantations on rocks, and he's trying to deal with trolls, and he's saying spells over people. So yeah, it's a good series. It is about wizardry though, so I'd be careful. I'd be careful out there.
Yeah, I was not a big Lord of the Rings person growing up. My brothers were. When I finally, I haven't read the books, I've watched the movies, and I'm like, where's the Catholic?
Yep.
Where is the any deity at all? And I've heard long explanations of where it is, and I buy it all, but it's, just to look at it, it's not obvious.
No, and I think it's beautiful because Jesus spoke in parables, right? There, the prodigal son, there's no mention of accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior in the prodigal son, right? That is a story because stories need to be told to touch people. It's a universal language. Stories can reach all different peoples at all different times and all different ages. So we have to tell stories that don't have explicit mentions of faith because grace builds on nature, and you have to form nature so grace can then be received and accepted on top of it. And all types of people need all types of stories. So I love the comment of people that are always like, oh, you do a series about wizards or whatever. And I'm always like, yeah, there's lots of these are stories. These are stories. These aren't real. If you go into the Old Testament, the magic that they're talking about is a very different magic than these fun, fairy tales that we're telling in these stories. You wouldn't have Tolkien, you wouldn't have C.S. Lewis, you wouldn't have all sorts of stuff if we took such a strict, harsh look at things. But it's categorically different. I'm all for being strict, but it's categorically different than what's talked about in the Old Testament. So I always welcome it. And I'm always like, you have Lord of the Rings on your shelf, right? You have Chronicles of Narnia on your shelf, right? Okay, so you're okay with wizardry and magic. It's just a certain kind that you're not okay with. And then people usually get lost and they're trying to define it. And they're like, well, but. And I'm like, no, this is argument's over. You have no principles. I can see how you can find God here.
What where did this documentary begin? Because EWTN Plus, that whole concept is pretty new. So
Yep.
where did it begin? And why you and why this?
Yeah, EWTN Plus came to me with the idea wanting to do a travel show that's similar to like Stanley Tucci's travel show, his food show, or like an Anthony Bourdain, but in the realm of culture. And that resonated with me immediately. As I've gotten older, I've continually grown to fall in love with just beauty, that part of the transcendentals. Um, and I love it in particular. I love beauty in particular because it goes against my earlier nature. Like growing up, I just didn't care for beauty. I thought it was something soft or effeminate. And especially growing up in America, you're raised with this mentality that beauty is a cost that can be cut. It's something that if you got some money left over in the budget, you can doll up this or doll up that. It was always left out of the conversation. And getting to go and experience these old cultures and learn the opposite mentality, boy, was I so wrong. And I love looking at my younger self and going, "You idiot, you're missing out on the whole thing." And yeah, I learned lessons about that, and it helps me grow as a person. Um, we wanted to make a fun travel show where you go deeper. You go deeper on beauty, you go deeper on culture. You ask why. Why would someone build this old building that they wouldn't even see in their lifetime, and their kids wouldn't see in their lifetime, and their kids' kids wouldn't see in their lifetime? Why do they do these things? And you understand the faith of the people and the thought and reason that goes into building these things. And it's just profound and it's beautiful. And I think all of us have gotten to walk by an old piece of art, take a glance at it, and just walk away. And there's something tragic about that too. It's like you don't know where this painting's been. You don't know what that painting's done. So in a way, this solves that too, because we give a lot of these various forms of beauty, whether it's art, architecture, music, poetry, food, wine. We give them their day, we give them their moment, and you learn just how profound these things are. Um, so yeah, it's a fun travel show, but we go deeper.
When you look at what happened to the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris and the effect that had on the French people, the Parisians, Catholic and not, and the effect that restoring it has continued to have, it's hard to argue that a church is just a building. It's just a place where people gather. It can look like anything. It can be an auditorium. It can be whatever. No, not really. No.
Yeah, it was the hope of the people. You go to the Duomo in Milan, or you go to these old cathedrals, and I loved learning about how the cathedral was where heaven touched earth, and it was a symbol of hope for the entire town. These people didn't have cell phones, they didn't have toilets, they didn't have internet. They didn't live a glamorous life, certainly by our standards. They would think we live like kings. Um, so the entire town rallied around giving themselves a symbol of hope of their culture, of their town. The cathedral really was a sense of pride for the whole area. It was the best of what everyone had. I mean, even women in the night would donate to the cathedral. Um, it was something that I loved learning and experiencing, and it just speaks to the faith of the people at the time, which was so beautiful to learn about. Like I remember going to the top of the Duomo, going on the roof. And you can easily access the roofs of these cathedrals now all over Europe. Back then, it was much harder.
Mm.
You didn't have helicopters and you didn't have elevators and modern ways of getting up there. Um, and I remember going to the top of some of these cathedrals and seeing statues up there, like intricate statues with detail. Like you could see eyelids and things. And I remember going like, to our expert, like we are hundreds of feet off the ground. No one is picking up on this detail. No one is even seeing these things. They're completely hidden from the naked eye if you're a normal person just walking around on the ground. Why would they put this here? And the expert and the guide got a little smirk on her face, and she goes, because the people of the time knew that some things were just for God. And that's the kind of stuff that we get in this series that really touch you. Um, we got to visit Michelangelo's third Pietà in Florence. Yeah, he had three. I didn't even know there was a two, but there's a three. And the Monsignor who was giving me the explanation of the Pietà just gave this moving explanation about how this was Michelangelo's final work. He was dying while he was going to die while he was making this. He was literally carving his own headstone in this Pietà. And it's Joseph of Arimathea setting Christ down as he's come off the cross. And the Blessed Mother's there and Mary Magdalene. And and he gave me this really moving explanation of an artist realizing he can no longer hold the chisel. I mean, it's unfinished. You still see exposed rock. The details aren't there. It was this very moving experience of Michelangelo, of this piece of art. You know, every artist realized they'll have to set their chisel down one day, and they have to question, was this about me or God? And he read a sonnet of Michelangelo's while he was making this piece of art. He read a sonnet from him, and it just brings you to tears. It just brings you to tears. It's very much exploring that question of like, I've made a god of my work and I've missed the whole point. Um, at the end of his life, he's having this realization. So, yeah, you get to go deep. You get to go deep.
There's a concept of art that's taken over, especially in the 20th century, that is very much about the personal expression of the
Yeah,
artist. It doesn't necessarily, especially more recently, represent anything in life, represent some thoughts and feeling of the artist, and you're just supposed to stand there and figure it out. But when you're doing a piece of art, not just for yourself or your peer group or the art critic, but for something outside of yourself and beyond yourself and for eternity, how can it not be different?
yeah. No, 100%. I mean, it's a very modern tendency to say art is just self-expression. It's artistic relativism, right? And that's why our generation has produced some of the most questionable art, to say it charitably, um,
And
ever before. I mean,
probably forgettable. I mean, who knows what will endure into the future, but
100%. Yeah, it's the banana on the wall that sold for millions of dollars, or someone literally putting, poop on a plate and setting it in the middle of an art museum. It's like, yeah, well, that I love that kind of stuff because it begs the question, is that art? And it's a good question to ask, right? And I think the common person would say no, right? My kids would go, "What are you talking about?" Right? And yes, art is self-expression and a lot of other things, right? The artist has a responsibility, whether he realizes it or not. He is influencing culture. And so he is quote unquote evangelizing, especially if he thinks he's not and hates it. The guy that's putting the poop on the plate and setting it in the center of the museum is making a bold statement that's a witness that's going to speak to people. So whether you realize it or not, you're going to have a profound effect on many people, unless you just keep it in your closet and you never show it to anyone, which no artists, especially ones that claim that it's only about self-expression, ever do. Um, so it's like, well, then what is art? What is art? And in my opinion, the artist should be one that's aware that he's having an impact on his audience and should take that impact in and try to do good with it. Art can reorder the brokenness in a disordered society, and it always has been able to have that power. And the church classically has always used art for that, especially when you think of like the Reformation and Counter-Reformation and all that. Art was a powerful tool in that time to help teach people what we believe. Um, so yeah, I think it's different, but art is different than just a teaching tool. It's something transcendent. Beauty is something that transcendent. It bypasses that intellectual calculation and goes right to the soul. That's why it's so powerful. So yeah, I don't quite buy the notion that art is only self-expression. I think it is, and a lot of other things. Because beauty isn't just decoration. It's the language of the soul.
what do you most hope that people who don't get to travel take from this series?
Well, I hope they have fun. I hope they enjoy it. And I hope they invite beauty into their life. I think, especially for us in America, beauty is not on the forefront of our minds. And I hope this show moves it forward in the line of importance. And they want to invite it in their own life. Because beauty is not something only for the rich, beauty is something for anyone in any time, in any place. all of us can invite beauty into our own life. I mean, if you look at your own homes, you don't need money to continue to add beauty into your home. You can thrift things for way cheaper than you would buy new things. And a lot of those things are really old and really beautiful, and you can bring them into your own home. My wife and I are like all the time, like when we're looking for art, the older art is cheaper than the newer art. And you're getting really ancient things online. If you find good websites, you can buy for, very reasonable prices, oil paintings that people are like ready to throw in the bin that are a couple hundred years old. And we buy them because it's like, yeah, like no one's bidding on this. I'm going to get it for what, $100. We've gotten some things for 100, $200 that you'd buy at like IKEA, a bigger thing that's like that same price, except it's old and ancient and beautiful. Um, yeah. So I hope people want to invite beauty into their lives. I hope that's my hope from the show. Along the way, I've met monks, musicians, artists.
I get fired up about this stuff, man.
Come, join me to see how timeless beauty still speaks to us today and how it just might change the way we see everything.